This is the mic. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Can we give Aris a huge round of applause, please? He does so much work to make this conference happen, both here and around the world, and I don't feel like he gets enough applause throughout the day. Nice. Before I go any further, can I ask you to lock eyes with somebody close to you and come to the silent agreement that you're going to be getting up to something together before too long? Awesome. And with that, I can tell you are actually an audience. You are alive, and that means we can instantiate the audience for the demos that we're going to use later on. Because you have done some crowd participation already, we've set that to 1, which might give you an idea of what's to come. That number is going to increase. So this is Midi Birds. It's one of my adventures in browser wonderland. That is Dexter the cat. That is That Seagull Bob, which is the namesake for my company. And you can connect with me in all of the usual places as Tony Edwards PZ. If you can't find me under that username, I don't want to be found, so leave me alone. So we're here today to talk about birdsong and web MIDI, and that's a very simple equation. It is one that can be expressed as a Venn diagram, and for the first part of this talk, we're going to dive into the MIDI part of it. Can I ask you to give me some kind of signal if you have heard of MIDI before? Oh, somebody's on the whistles already. I like it. Can I get another show of hands if you've heard a bird sing before? Good. I'm glad I cut all of those slides out last night. We are in the right room now, but it's important that we have the same shared definition. So what is MIDI? MIDI is an interface for passing around arrays. Now, while I've said musical things there, you might be surprised by some of the uses of MIDI. If you've seen a firework display, for example, that is controlled via MIDI, or a derivative of. If you've ever been to a theater and seen lights, these are controlled via a system called DMX, which is an extension of MIDI effectively. It was based upon that standard. MIDI became a thing thanks to lots of help from Roland in the 80s, and it was over the 80s that this API was, or this interface was standardized. For those of you of a certain age, though, I'm not talking about Roland Rat. I am talking about the keyboard manufacturer. Out of interest, how many of you have actually ever seen Roland Rat? Oh, good. My references are just creeping out of relevance. And that there is the first MIDI keyboard that was ever released to the market. And that revolutionized music. It put music in the hands of everybody at home. If you had a computer and you had enough money to buy a MIDI controller, you could make music. For geeks like me, the kind of stuff you would probably make is like this. And that's a great example of why they're called MIDI controllers. That is hooked up to a piece of software which is doing all of the legwork, and the controller is just sending a signal. A keyboard has everything in one. So a keyboard can be a MIDI controller, but a MIDI controller can't ever be a keyboard, because they're two different things. It revolutionized musical instruments. So it introduced a whole load of new types of instrument onto the market. And you'll see that they're not necessarily much like a keyboard. They're quite varied, and they are as weird and as wacky as going all the way up to wind instruments and Tesla coils. Now, that Tesla coil video is something to behold, but I don't have time to show it today. But at the end of the talk, I'll give a link to a blog post with a load of references for this talk. I highly recommend you go watch that video. It is a rabbit hole you will dive into. For today, though, we are going to be using a 25-key Akai controller, this one here. And it's kind of the entry level for this kind of stuff. So whenever I press a key on this controller, we get the message sent through. And that 3-item array contains the state, key, and velocity. So the state being on or off, the key being the key number that's been pressed, and then the velocity is the force with which it's been pressed. Quite simple. So when I press this key, the wrong demo is loaded, so the wrong sound effect played. But that would have sent this message to the piece of software. And then when I released it, it would have sent that. So it's just changing the state. The velocity would probably change as well, but not for that note. So this is a web conference. How does it work on the web? Well, not at all for 25% of the people on the web, unfortunately. It's nice to know that this has grown 4.5% in 7 years since it came out, 8 years. And I think that's just because Chrome adoption's gone upwards. But it doesn't matter. This is a personal project, and it works in Firefox behind a flag, and that's the only thing that I care about, really. I was told at last night's speaker dinner that I would be drop-kicked off the stage if I did not include any code in my talk. So this is all you're getting. Within that success handler, you would map an event listener to each key. Normally, it would just be one, but you can set different event listeners for different keys. And with that said, that's pretty much all of the Midi covered. Okay? It's an interface for passing around numbers. Now, birds, on the other hand, they're not an interface for passing around numbers. How did they get into the mix? So they became a thing in my life over lockdown. I decided to take 500 days off of the world, by and large, and spent a huge amount of time sat in the garden. And when I was out in the garden, I would hear loads of birds shouting at each other over my head. Because that's what they're doing. They're effectively having arguments and battles and fights all around us, and they just sound like lovely little tweety things. I wanted to know what they were saying. But not even ChatGPT could do that for me, unfortunately. But I did find the BirdNet app. And the BirdNet app promises to be the easiest way to identify birdsong using an app. And it does that by creating a spectrogram. And a spectrogram is a visual representation of audio that is better for a computer to understand. And when we're using the app, we can just highlight certain sections and see what the bird is. By giving feedback, you're feeding back into a data set that is coming out of a university in Germany, Cologne, I think. And it's nice. I get a warm, squishy feeling from feeding back into an AI algorithm that isn't going to take all of our jobs. It's going to be a fun few years, folks. I was quite impressed by the results. Oh, I missed one. Sound people, I am definitely going to need sound. I'm going to give them 10 seconds to press some buttons and then do that again. We're definitely going to need sound. Here we go. Should we try it? We're going to give them a cheer if they get it right. No. No. This is going to be a terrible end to the talk. I can see there's a guy sat in a booth out there and he's got fear in his eyes. He's giving me signals. Oh, dear. So, you got the sound before, but not now. Oh, yeah, true, it was. OK, so that was me going, tweet, 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 tweet. And it did identify it as a human. You go for it. I'll keep rolling, though. These are rooks. They sound like, caw, caw, caw. They're doing all of that kind of stuff. All right? Oh, no. Yeah, it's not coming up.
Something to do with, I don't know.
Don't worry, I can improvise this bit. This is the only, as long as the other bit works.
Okay, so let's do like this. Exactly.
That's
and
fine.
you can play.
Don't worry.
Yes, I'm putting the presentation on.
Okay, so this one was some birds going, doo, 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 doo. And then my girlfriend was saying, oh, that one's only got one leg, which I thought only happened to pigeons in London, but apparently happens everywhere. And the great thing about this one is this was a moment in our lives. So this was my girlfriend's first lunch break on a new job in her career. And we went and sat in the harbour, had a pasty, and we were listening to some birds there. It's become part of our life. Now, this one, if you could hear it, would be my neighbour shouting at his child across his garden, not a heron. There is a heron in the data set, though. So there is one in there. So it got 1, 2, 3 right, but not quite 100% right on the third one. Fourth one, completely wrong. But 60% right. I like those odds. We'll roll with it. The data set included birds like these. These are quite common ones. You might want to remember those front row. And we put these into a JSON structure. And with that JSON structure, we've now got something that we can use to interface with that web API, Midi API. So what we're going to do is play a game. We're going to drive it from our Midi controller. And we're going to do it in teams. So this is the point in the proceedings where I have to split you in half down here and say that you're all team A, you're all team B, and judging by the difference in size, you lot have got to pick things up, all right? You've really got to put some effort into this, because you are outnumbered and outgunned. I'm going to need team representatives, and I've got 2 prepared. So Sam and Luke, can we give Sam and Luke a huge round of applause when they come up? Come on, now's your time, gentlemen. Now's your time. While we're doing some stuff, do you remember that person that you locked eyes with? I want you to just take a few seconds while we're scrambling between demos and share some bird names. There's been 10 or 11 in this talk so far, but if you know any that aren't in that data set, now's the time to share them. So I'll give you a few seconds to just share while we do our thing. All right.
What have got the feelings to be on birds?
Okay.
Oh, they're going to be on birds.
Okay, so I love that ripple in the audience. There's lots of ornithologists in here, apparently. I love it. Okay, so this runs from a server, and for security reasons, you have to interact with the DOM. So I've got a button here with my job description on. Just so you know, WebMidi is possibly the biggest security hole in your web browser. So if your browser doesn't have it, it's actually a good thing, to be completely honest. Luke, would you mind pressing a key on the keyboard on the controller and seeing what happens? Any of the Okay. So that was one. Press another one. Tweet, 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 tweet. Oh, dear. Cool. There's noise coming out. We'll go with that. So, our first game. If you knew Roland Rat, chances are you're going to know this. This is going to be Flock Fortunes, which is a complete and total rip-off of Family Fortunes. Has anybody here seen Family Fortunes before? Thank God for that. If you haven't, this is going to be a long 5 minutes. So can I get the pair of you? One on this side, very carefully not to fall off the stage. You're going to need that key. And you're going to need that key. And in a second, I'm going to ask you a question, and it's the fastest answer wins. So, when asked to self-identify, what birds were most seen in my garden? Fastest one wins. Yes.
Seagull?
Seagull. Oh, jeez, I haven't got my notes up. Give me 1 sec. Give me a sec. You are right. There are seagulls in there. But I can't remember which one it is. Yes. You got 22 points. Well done, Sam. Okay. So, yeah, go on. Give him a round of applause. So you've got control of the board now. You can let go of the key. What other bird do you think that we found in my garden? And you can ask the audience if you want.
A collared dove.
A collared dove. He's doing good for you, folks. Doing good. Do you want to try another one?
How should I ask the audience? Just
Go for it. Shout out some birds, folks.
pigeon.
Pigeon. You've done pigeon. I've heard a few.
Oh yes, wren.
A wren. No. Control goes over to team A. Luke, what birds would you like?
Robin?
Robin. Second place. Another one. No, there were no penguins in my garden.
House sparrow.
Oh, top point. If this was a real show, you'd have just won a prize. Can you complete the set with the third? I'll give you a clue. It begins with D. I'm going to take it. He said Dunnock. He didn't hear it. Fantastic. No, I don't have any ducks either. So far, Team A has 150 and Team B has 48. So Team B, you've got some catching up to do. Your numbers are not doing you much good. Fantastic. So now we can switch over to the second game. And this one's even more fun. You're not supposed to laugh at the idea that this is fun. So this is play your cards right, or play your birds right. And the idea of this game is to move from left to right, left to right, across the board, and saying whether the next bird has a higher number of sightings than the previous one. Okay? And the audience are going to shout out higher or lower to help you. Did you hear that? You're all going to shout out higher or lower to support your team. I do need to ask you a question, though, first, to decide who goes. No buzzes. You are in the lead at the moment, so you get to answer first. In 2015, herring gulls, the common seagull, joined the birds conservation list as one of the most rapidly declining species in Europe. But by what percentage did that population decline in the 20 years leading up to it?
Is this on my own, or can I...
On your own, you can ask for help if you want. It's a number between 1 and 100.
7?
7. Bad choice.
Yeah.
Higher or lower than 7?
Higher.
Higher. Congratulations. You're team A, aren't you? Dunnock. So the fabled Dunnock. So right now, you get to choose another bird. I would like you to select a key from here and press and hold it down. That will be your choice, and it will reveal your bird. Any of them. A long-tailed tit. Do you think there were fewer or, no, a higher number of long-tailed tits or a lower number of long-tailed tits?
Then the Dunnock.
Than the Dunnock.
I say lower.
Lower. Do we agree, team? Someone said no. 19. But you were right to do that. Well done. Choose your next bird. Collared dove. I love the static replacement for the beautiful bird song that I spent 5 months recording. So we've got a collared dove. Do you think there was a higher number or a lower number? And team, shout out, give him some help. Higher or lower?
Higher, of course.
Higher, we reckon higher. So we've locked that in, and 26, we're on a roll. Choose your next bird. Any bird, except that one. A wood pigeon, you're sticking with the pigeons. Higher or lower than a collared dove? Higher. They're getting into this, you look good. I think you might catch up. You're wrong, that means control goes over to you, Luke, with team B. Great tit. Choose your bird, any bird. But not that one. Or that one. Cold tip, great. Do you think there were a higher number or a lower number?
Higher.
Higher? Do we agree, team? Higher. No, control goes back to you. We've removed the pigeon. You get to choose another bird. Any bird.
Let's see if this one works.
But not that one. Are you like all just pressing the same key? A buzzard. Nice bird. Do we think there were more or less, higher or lower number of buzzards than?
I think I know this one. Yep, no.
Lower. Yes, this could be the winner. This could be the winner. So you're going to pick a bird, and the crowd is going to go so wild with telling you their answer. Pick a bird. Any bird. Oh. What do we say? It's your choice.
Ooh, I'm going to say higher.
Higher. Ah. 2. Ah, what a shame. Goes back to you, Luke. Pick a bird. Any bird. A raven. Higher or lower than 18?
Higher.
Higher. Wrong. Oh, we're running out of birds now. Come on. Not that one. Or that one. A rook. Higher or lower than a rook? I'm going to give you a clue. I have a flock of rooks.
Well, higher.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much. So, Team A, you've got 40 there. Team B, you've got none. Ooh. Let's see your total scores. Team A, you are the winners. Give yourselves a huge round of applause. And give our participants a round of applause as they go back to their seats. The bad thing about demos is it resets your timer to 0 as a speaker. It doesn't help. So welcome back. We're nearly at the end of the talk, okay? And again, that's Dexter having a cute little stroke. So we've covered the birds, okay? You've seen the craziness we can get up to with birds. And that was one half of the Venn diagram. We briefly touched on Midi, which was the other half of the Venn diagram. And for better or worse, we looked at that intersection. And by the way, the only thing in that intersection is this talk and one song on Bandcamp. Now, we were asked to give a message for this kind of talk, and I don't know, it could be to connect to the nature cycle of some sort. It could be to be more reflective of yourself. I could say be bored, but I think overall, you should just have fun, okay? And I think Jason, thank you. One person wants to have fun. I think we've got a talk rounding off the day about having fun with technology, so I won't dive too much into that. All that is left said is that you have been absolutely awesome, but it's time to set you to null and let you be garbage collected. Much like Dexter, this talk is now packed safely away in the box. I have been Tony Edwards. You have been awesome. Thank you very much for your attention.